Manila, February 1945. After more than 2 years of Japanese occupation, American forces fight to reclaim Manila, the capital of the Philippines, considered the Pearl of the East. American forces, commanded by the controversial General MacArthur, engage in fierce combat against the Japanese forces entrenched there in an apocalyptic, intense and cruel battle, which, unlike most of the battles that took place in the Pacific theater of operations, is fought predominantly in urban terrain, and that is why it became known as the Stalingrad of the East. This fight, which lasted about 1 month, resulted in the virtual destruction of Manila, the elimination of 16,000 Japanese soldiers, 1,000 American soldiers, and more than 100,000 civilians. This epic can be relived through the advanced squad leader system through historical module 11 called Sword and Fire, Manila, released by MMP Publishing in 2021. This module has several special features that we will explore during the execution of its scenarios. Among these features, the historical map stands out, faithfully representing the city at the time these events took place, and which can be visited through the scenarios in this module. To begin this interesting adventure, we will use the SF3 scenario, the Grim Reaper's Lair. This scenario's main feature is the use of a restricted area of the 6th map in this module, with a low density in the number of squads involved, 10 equivalent squads for the Japanese versus 14 for the Americans. Although the action takes place within a restricted area of just one of the 6 maps included in this module, this area is an extremely significant example of the characteristics of the module's special terrains, which we will explore later. Introduction. Paco Cemetery, Luzon, Philippines, 11th February 1945. Located a few blocks southeast of the new police station is the Paco Cemetery. It was built in 1820 and is enclosed by 2 concentric adobe walls measuring 3 meters in height and width. Entrance to the central courtyard is through 4 gates in the walls. Information gathered by Filipino scouts indicates that the Japanese are using the cemetery to store large quantities of ammunition and supplies. If the Japanese plan to defend the cemetery, it will be necessary to eliminate it before the advance towards the police station can take place. The Americans sent patrols into this area to determine how well the Paco Cemetery is being defended. The terrain. As previously stated, the terrain is characterized by being a predominantly urban area, with special terrain features that are peculiar to the Sword and Fire module. The red line circumscribes the limits of the battle area, with the black band delimiting the area of disposition of the Japanese forces and the blue band showing the position to the east from which the American units of the first wave will initiate the battle. Order of battle. Japanese. Elements of the 5th Naval Battalion consisting of 2 squads 447 First Class and 7 squads 347 Second Class in addition to 5 cannon or medium heavy machine gun crews. It is interesting to remember that the Japanese forces, unlike the other forces during the war, used dedicated crews to use their medium or heavy machine guns. In addition, the Japanese will have an 8-0 leader, 3 light machine guns, and 3 75mm artillery cannons. As fortifications, we will have 6 trenches, 2 wires, and 12 minefield factors. According to special scenario rule number 2, the Japanese will receive an additional force conditioned on the result of 1 die. If the result is less than or equal to 3, Group A will be deployed with a 10-2 leader, a 9-0 leader, 2 heavy machine guns, a light machine gun, and a 50 mm mortar. If the result is greater than 3, Group B will enter with a 10-2 leader, a 9-1 leader, a heavy machine gun, a medium machine gun, and a flamethrower. The Japanese forces have a multitude of extremely peculiar characteristics that we will address as the scenario's actions develop. The Japanese units will have an ELR of 3 and a sniper activation of 5. Americans. The American forces, made up of elements of the 1st Battalions of the 148th Infantry Regiment, part of the 37th Infantry Division, will enter the scenario in 2 waves. The first will enter the first round in or east of the 4W column and will have 9 squads 666 and 3 half squads 346. These units are somewhat brittle due to their low morale of 6, however, the broken morale of these units has a morale of 8, which will make it much easier to recover their morale during the rally phase. This first wave will have leaders 9-2, 8-1 and 7-0 in addition to a heavy machine gun, 2 medium machine guns, a bazooka 45, a 60 mm mortar, a flamethrower and 2 demolition charges. The second wave will enter in the third turn from the south or east of the battle area and will have 4 squads 666, a half squad 346, a leader -1, a dismounted heavy machine gun, a bazooka 45, a dismounted 60 mm mortar and a flamethrower. The American forces will have an ELR of 4 and a sniper activation number of 3. Victory conditions. Americans win if they fulfill one or more of the following conditions. A. Score twice as many or more victory points per kill as the Japanese and control buildings 3Y68 and 4E64. B. Have 3 or more equivalent squads in any of the hexes in the Paco Cemetery. Special scenario rules. Environmental conditions are moderate with no wind at the start. Place markers at 3Y63, 4I72 and 4K61. Consequences. As the American patrols approach, Japanese machine guns appear to be firing from all directions at once. Outside the thick adobe walls of the cemetery, Japanese forces have dug several trenches and placed mines and wire to block the entrance to the fortifications. To their dismay, the Americans have spotted at least 3 75 mm guns positioned to cover the access to the cemetery. With armored support still unavailable south of the Pasig River, it will be nearly impossible to eliminate the Japanese from this area. Wisely, the Americans slowly disengaged from the fight and launched a heavy artillery barrage over this entire area for the rest of the day and throughout the night. By the next morning, all the defenders were either dead or had abandoned the cemetery to the Americans. Peculiar terrain characteristics. Before we start the setup itself, let's analyze some terrain characteristics, and especially one that is directly related to this specific scenario, which is the Paco Cemetery. The cemetery wall is a stone wall with a height ranging from 2 to 3.5 meters. The cemetery wall is a level 1 obstacle and blocks all lines of sight that cross this wall. The exception is cemetery gates. The only ways to cross the cemetery wall are by climbing Rule B 11.4 or scaling B 23.424. If these maneuvers are to be used, they will be detailed as they occur. The rules for paths within the cemetery are governed in a similar way to those for roads within woods. The place where the paths cross the cemetery wall are considered gates, and these allow entry and line of sight into the cemetery. The wall advantage can be requested at the cemetery gates. Any fire that passes through the gates by units that do not have the wall advantage will be considered area fire, Rule A 7.23. The gates provide a terrain modifier of +3 for units that do not move. The other rules for cemeteries apply, Rule B 18. Any adobe or stone building that has a staircase or tower symbol printed on it contains a level -1, the basement, below which there may be sewers. Only infantry and support weapons can enter or deploy in basements. Infantry can only exit basements through a staircase, manhole, connecting trench or tunnel. Infantry inside the basement can move directly to another adjacent basement hex as long as the hexes share a hex side of the building. Basements have a stacking limit of 1 equivalent squad. Rubble. These are intrinsic representations that can be made of stone, adobe or wood and block all line of sight of the same level drawn through the rubble hexes and have a terrain modifying effect, TEM, equivalent to the material of which they are made, stone +3, adobe +3, wood +2. Printed rubble locations never have a basement below, manhole, connecting trench or tunnel. Let's also address one last relevant feature to be able to start this scenario, which are the hexes that have a terrain combination. There are several combination terrains on this map: building, palm trees, building, forest, shellhole, palm trees, each with its own specific characteristic. The hexes where there is a combination between shellhole and woods, palm grove and cemetery allow for a cumulative terrain modification effect, +1 shellhole +1 wood or palm grove. Let's move on to the setup itself. The Japanese are entitled to 12 mine factors that will be placed on 2 markers of 6 mines each. The second step is to randomly choose which of the Japanese auxiliary groups will be placed in the scenario. 5. The second group is chosen, and the first group is eliminated. In 4E65, a trench will be placed under which one of the artillery pieces will be positioned. In this position, the cannon will be able to cover the central axis road towards the cemetery. In the church tower in 4E64, level 2, the heavy machine gun will be placed with its crew. New trench in the hex with bamboo in 4E68. Initially in this hex it was planned to position a squad 347 with the flamethrower. Trench with the second cannon in 4E70. Evaluating the scenario a little better, the option was made to reposition this squad in hex 4G69, where they will certainly be more effective as they will be able to use all the power of this weapon, 24 firepower without modifiers, on enemy units in adjacent hexes. Under the trench abandoned by the flamethrower team, the third cannon is positioned. Trench in 4E67 with a squad 347 and a medium machine gun. It is worth remembering that a squad can operate the medium machine gun, but with this, it will suffer penalties in the form of a greater propensity to jam and become non-functional. At a later point, Jim will place a dedicated team to operate this machine gun. In 4D62, the 2447 squads will be positioned to cover the enemy advance on this flank. A squad with the medium machine gun in 4E65 will be positioned with a squad with a light machine gun. Another squad with a light machine gun will be positioned just below the church tower in 4E64. The towers have a capacity of only one half squad or crew. Squad 347 with a light machine gun in 4D72. At this point, Jim realizes that a team is left over and locates the medium machine gun with the squad, making the personnel exchange. Squad 347 in a more advanced position in the stone rubble at 4G67. Another squad 347 in the stone house at 4G65. Trenches at 4D70 and 4D68. The minefields go to hexes 4H78 and 4H65. The barbed wires to hexes 4D65 and 4D67 obstructing access to the interior of the cemetery through these gates. Leader 9-1 moves to the church tower with the team with the heavy machine gun. Leader 8-0 to squads 447. Leader 10-0 to hex 4E67. As previously mentioned, Japanese units have some special characteristics such as the fact that they position 25% of their equivalent squads hidden in night scenarios and, as is this case, they can position 10% of its units hidden with the fractions rounded up. Since we have 9 squads and 2.5 more equivalent squads, in the form of crews, for a total of 11.5 equivalent squads, with the right to at least 2 squads to be placed in a hidden manner. One of the obvious choices was the flamethrower unit in 4G67. Another chosen stacking is made up of the occupants of the church tower. The trenches are placed in a hidden manner when in concealed terrain or when in open terrain until seen by enemy units. To finish the units placed in hidden initial positioning, the unit with the artillery piece in 4E68. The other Japanese units in concealed terrain are placed under the concealing markers according to the special rules of the scenario. The minefields and the wire fences will also be placed under the hit marker. Taking advantage of this moment, let's review some of the characteristics of the mines. One of these, relevant to this scenario, is that the minefields can be placed in the interior hexes of buildings or rubble. The presence of minefields is only revealed if an enemy unit activates a mine attack when entering or leaving this hex, or via active search by a squad or half-squad crew, and this attack does not suffer from FFMO, FFNAME or other terrain modifiers, exception, deep snow. Mines only attack units that are moving, advancing or withdrawing from close combat or routing. Units under the concealed marker are attacked without modifiers, and this marker will only be lost if the unit's morale is broken or if it suffers a reduction due to casualties. To try to locate hidden units and minefields, the Americans will be able to use the search maneuver. In this process, a squad or half squad can perform a search. To do so, these units that finish their movement can, by spending one movement factor, perform a search in adjacent hexes as long as they are not pinned or have performed an assault movement. A die is rolled and the result shows how many hexes, excluding the one occupied by the unit performing the search, will not be visible. The unit performing the search, regardless of the results, will be placed under the TI marker for the rest of this turn. All units present in the searched hexes are revealed. If one of the searched hexes has an armed unit in good condition order, minefield, residual fire, there may be a counterattack trying to cause casualties in the unit that carried out the search. If this possibility arises during the battle, we will detail it at the appropriate time. Finally, we will position the concealed dummy markers received by the special rules of the scenario before moving on to the setup of the American units. Before this, Jim realizes that he has placed 3 Japanese units as hidden initially and could have positioned only 2 units. In this way, the Japanese unit in 4G65 loses the hidden condition and is now under the conceal marker. Let's set up the American forces. Before proceeding with the setup, let's review the deployment rule for American units. According to Rule A2.9, 10% of the squads that start the game on the board and 10% of those that will enter the board on any given turn have the right to deploy, that is, form 2 half squads from one squad without the need for a leader or test check, with the fractions rounded up. Since we have a total of 10.5 equivalent squads in the American order of battle, we will be able to deploy to squads 666 becoming half squads 346. These half squads will be the spearhead of the American attack and will be primarily responsible for attracting fire from hidden or camouflaged Japanese units, as well as performing the search maneuver to find minefields and Japanese units that have not fired. 3 of these half squads will form a fire group with medium and heavy machine guns and will be posted in Hex 4S67. Leader 8-1 will assist this stack in directing fire. A half squad will be positioned in an adjacent hex next to the 60 mm mortar. 2 of the half squads will be placed on the flanks of the American forces and will advance through these sectors while the remaining half squad will move through the center of the map. The bulk of the American forces will advance through the central sector of the American front. These stacks will receive the flamethrower, the bazooka, and one of the demolition charges. These stacks will have the support of leaders 9-1 and 7-0. Only one squad with one of the demolition charges will be placed immediately north of Rua Padre Fora. The Japanese sniper goes to Hex 4G68. The American sniper is positioned in Hex 4E68. The American units out of line of vision of the Japanese and in concealment terrain will receive the concealment markers. To finish the setup phase, we will use a resource that is the prerogative of the defenders of a scenario, in this case the Japanese. This resource is called bore sighting and allows medium and heavy machine guns and artillery pieces to take a certain hex as a reference for firing. In the case of artillery pieces, the bonus of -2 as a modifier in the to-hit process, and, in the case of machine guns, -2 in the dice roll for their shots. With this, we will end this setup phase and this episode to prepare for the next clip with the first round of this battle.